We are coming on the air with a stunning development that has sent a shockwave through Washington. A shift so sudden, so explosive, that the entire political landscape feels like it just tilted overnight. In the last few hours, a federal judge has taken a dramatic and unexpected step. She has unsealed a massive trove of evidence tied to Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Donald Trump. Documents that, until today, were kept locked away under one of the strictest seals in federal law. The moment that seal broke, Washington erupted. Because this release didn't simply stir debate, it ignited a political firestorm. In less than 24 hours, the reaction has surged far beyond the cautious pace Washington is known for. No guarded statements, no careful wording. Members of Congress are now openly using one word: arrest. Yes, arrest, said publicly, on the record, without hesitation. Such an explosive escalation is almost unheard of in modern American politics. To understand why the response has been so immediate and so severe, we have to break down the mechanics, the timing, the content, and the profound implications of what has just been released to the public. This isn't just another Washington twist. This is a turning point. This is acceleration, the kind that changes everything. The Department of Justice had been preparing for a controlled release of reports to Congress. That was the plan, a bureaucratic, methodical handover. However, the federal judge overseeing the timeline effectively overruled that pace, deciding that transparency could not wait. The result was not a slow leak, but a deluge of information that has forced legislators from both parties to confront the findings immediately. Let's dig into the substance of these unsealed files, because understanding the specific charges is the only way to understand the panic we are seeing on Capitol Hill. The indictment mentioned in these documents is not a vague list of grievances. It is a granular 38-count federal indictment. 37 of those counts specifically target Donald Trump. The headline charge here is the willful retention of national defense information. Now, in the world of legal reporting, we often throw these terms around. But I want to take a moment to explain exactly what that phrase means, because the specific words matter immensely. Retention simply means keeping something, but the word willful is the legal pivot point. It implies that the act wasn't an accident. It wasn't a clerical error where a box got moved to the wrong room by a low-level staffer. Willful retention argues that the individual knew they possessed these documents, knew they were not supposed to have them, and made a conscious choice to keep them anyway. The documents in question are not just personal letters or diaries. They are classified as national defense information. Under the Espionage Act, this category covers data that could be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of a foreign nation. This is the highest tier of sensitivity involving the safety of American intelligence assets and military personnel. But the indictment goes further. It charges a conspiracy to obstruct justice. Let's break that down. In federal law, you cannot have a conspiracy of one. A conspiracy requires at least two people agreeing to commit a criminal act. By leveling this charge, the grand jury, a panel of ordinary citizens, not politicians, has determined there is probable cause to believe that Donald Trump worked in coordination with at least one other person to prevent the government from retrieving these documents. This suggests a coordinated effort, a plan rather than a solitary mistake. The files also detail allegations of corruptly concealing a document or record. This is a specific legal term that refers to the active hiding of evidence to impede an investigation. The allegations state that when the National Archives began demanding these documents as far back as May 2021, the response was not just non-compliance, but an active scheme to hide the material. The unsealed evidence reportedly outlines a pattern of false statements and representations made to federal investigators. So why is Congress reacting with such speed? Why are we seeing arrest demands within a single news cycle? It comes down to the nature of the evidence that was just revealed. In a polarized Washington, you expect Democrats to call for accountability. That is the baseline of modern politics. Representative Jaime Rashin, a key figure on the House Judiciary Committee, immediately took to public channels to declare that the Department of Justice cannot sit idle if criminality is evident. Rashin's argument is constitutional. He is asserting that the DOJ has a mandate to act regardless of the political fallout. He is essentially saying that if the evidence shows what it appears to show, a failure to prosecute would be a failure of the department's core function. However, the true indicator of the severity of these files is not the reaction from the opposition, but the reaction from within Donald Trump's own party. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, has made a statement that cuts through the usual partisan defense. She explicitly stated that sealed files cannot be used to hide corruption and that the American people deserve the truth regardless of how high that corruption goes. When you have a sitting Republican senator refusing to dismiss the evidence as a witch hunt or political persecution and instead pivoting to a stance of transparency and accountability, it signals that the content of these unsealed files is undeniably damaging. In Washington, party loyalty is usually the strongest force in the room. When that loyalty fractures within hours of a document release, it tells you that the evidence is likely stark, clear, and difficult to defend. We also need to contextualize the timing. We are discussing these events in January 2025. Donald Trump is currently serving his second term as president. This is not a retrospective investigation into a retired politician. This is a live crisis involving the sitting commander-in-chief. The administration is currently attempting to push forward a robust agenda involving economic policy, immigration reform, and international relations. This unsealing detonates a political landmine right in the middle of that governance. It creates a scenario of political paralysis. This occurs when the executive branch becomes so consumed by legal defense and scandal management that it loses the bandwidth to govern. Every press briefing, every diplomatic meeting, and every legislative negotiation is now overshadowed by the contents of these files. Congress is asking, how can the administration focus on infrastructure or tax codes when the president is facing calls for arrest based on unsealed federal evidence? The sheer weight of the scandal sucks the oxygen out of the room. It forces allies to distance themselves to avoid collateral damage, and it emboldens opponents to halt all cooperation. Let's look deeper at the grand jury aspect mentioned in the reports. It is crucial to remember that this indictment was not handed down by Joe Biden, nor by the media, nor by Congress. It was voted on by a grand jury in the Southern District of Florida. This means a group of regular citizens looked at the evidence presented by Special Counsel Jack Smith and voted that crimes had likely been committed. This distinction is vital because it strips away the argument that this is purely a creation of Washington insiders. The bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, as cited in the special report, is adherence to the rule of law. The argument being made by the unsealing of these documents is that no individual, not even the President of the United States, is exempt from the statutes that protect national security. The unsealed files also reportedly connect dots that were previously isolated. We are seeing threads that tie the handling of these documents to broader investigations, potentially including the events surrounding January 6th. When investigators look at intent and motive, they look for patterns. The unsealed evidence suggests that the retention of these documents might not have been an isolated event, but part of a larger operational method within the Trump organization. Now, we must analyze the specific claim of false statements. This is often the charge that traps high-profile figures. It is the cover-up historically that causes more legal jeopardy than the crime itself. The indictment alleges that federal investigators were lied to. In a federal investigation, lying to an agent is a felony in itself. If the unsealed evidence contains proof, recordings, emails, or witness testimony that Donald Trump or his associates knowingly misled the FBI, that is a black and white legal issue that is very difficult to spin politically. So, where do we go from here? The unsealing of these files has created a perfect storm. You have a judiciary that is forcing transparency. You have a Congress that is reacting with shock and demands for immediate action. And you have a Justice Department that is now under immense pressure to move forward with the case despite the complexities of prosecuting a sitting president. The demands for arrest are significant because they bypass the usual political remedy of impeachment. Impeachment is a political process. Arrest is a criminal one. By using that specific language, Members of Congress are signaling that they view this as a criminal matter, not just a political violation. For the Trump administration, the strategy of delaying and sealing information has hit a wall. The strategy was always to keep the details murky, to argue about process rather than substance. But now the substance is out. The public can read the charges. They can read about the demands from the National Archives. They can read about the alleged movement of boxes to hide them from lawyers and investigators. The timeless reality of this situation is that the legal system operates on facts while the political system operates on perception. Right now, both are working against the administration. The facts contained in the indictment are severe, involving the deepest secrets of the American government. The perception driven by the bipartisan shock in Congress is that a line was crossed that cannot be uncrossed. The coming days will be critical. We are watching to see if the Department of Justice, led by the Attorney General, responds to the congressional demands. We are watching to see if the leadership of the Republican Party rallies around Donald Trump, or if the cracks shown by Senator Mouski widen into a split. This is not just another headline. This is a stress test for the American constitutional system. Can the government function when the head of the executive branch is accused by a grand jury of endangering national security? Can Congress hold a president accountable during a term? These are the questions that are no longer theoretical. They are being asked right now in real time on the floor of the House and Senate. As we continue to monitor this, remember the core of the story. Sealed evidence regarding the safety of the United States was unsealed, and the people who saw it, Republicans and Democrats alike, concluded that the situation is dire. That is the reality we are facing tonight. We will stay on this story as it develops.